Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Well, I'm getting it done. I wanted to make sure I got this out before the end of this month. So I did the video on the cloves, the benefits of cloves. So make sure you go back and watch that one, which I'll link to down below. But I'll also be linking to the full playlist that I've been working on for over 6 years now, where I cover specific herbs and their many benefits. And so today is about nutmeg, which is one of my very favorites. The only drawback to nutmeg, it's one of those you got to be more careful of not to overdo it. But that is not really that common because nutmeg is so powerful, just like cloves, that it's a little hard to get too much of it, but still just keep that in mind, especially if you're on any kinds of medications. And some of the indicators that you might be getting too much nutmeg is a rapid heartbeat, nausea, vomiting, disorientation, agitation, and sometimes even hallucinations. But nutmeg, like so many of these types of herbs and spices, has so many great benefits and it just tastes so good. And so let's talk about the nutrients first. So what you're going to find in your nutmeg is fiber, manganese, thiamine, vitamin B6, folate, magnesium, and copper. And the main active compound in nutmeg that helps give it many of its medicinal properties and health benefits is the myristic acid. But that's also the thing that you can get too much of if you're not careful. So before I go into the benefits of nutmeg, I'm going to be showing you some photos. Pretty much all the photos I'm showing you I collected from the internet, but I thought it was really interesting what the nutmeg fruit looked like. It kind of resembles to me a little bit of a pear or an apple, yet the nutmeg, the part that we most commonly use, is the seed itself inside the fruit. Now, I did find out that the fruit can be used. It just doesn't have a lot of flavor. It tends to be a little acidic and bitter tasting, but if you cook it and add enough sugar and spices, you can make, a pretty good tasting jam. And some people do, though it is most common that people use the seed. But here was the other interesting thing, is there's an outer layer that when you first open up the fruit, an outer red kind of webby looking layer over the seed that is called mace, and that is also used as a spice. It has, I guess, just a little bit different flavor than the nutmeg seed itself, which, let me hold up one right here. I do keep a good amount of whole nutmeg on hand so that I can grate it myself for a much fresher flavor. But I do still like having some ground nutmeg. And Frontier is where I get most of my herbs, Frontier Co-op. And I'll link to their store down below. But sometimes when I can't get what I need from Frontier Co-op, I'll find other sources and I'll check them out. I'll read about them, and especially if they're organic. And I can't remember the name of the source I'm getting the ground nutmeg from, but if it's still available, I'll link to it down below. The ground nutmeg has such a wonderful flavor. Now, nutmeg got powerful antioxidants in it, which means it's helpful at slowing aging as well as preventing and fighting cancer. It's naturally anti-inflammatory, which means it's going to be good at helping with any pain caused from inflammation. It is also an antibacterial, and I believe it is antiviral, even though I didn't put that on my list. You might want to double check that for yourself. Typically, a lot of your spices that are naturally antibacterial are also antiviral. It's beneficial to heart health and is a natural antidepressant, which I can see just because the flavor is so warming and comforting. I love that. Just the flavor alone, I think, is a natural antidepressant. But it is also the compounds within the nutmeg that help with that and also help with anxiety. It helps to improve blood sugar levels. So this is very good for people who are diabetic or even pre-diabetic. And as I said, being a natural anti-inflammatory, one of the things it does help with is pain within the muscles and joints, which in that case, you can take your nutmeg oil, which I do have some of that on hand, an essential oil, and either mix it with a carrier oil or add it to your homemade muscle rub if you want, because I have a recipe out on that, though I haven't added nutmeg oil to it. It is a good option to add into that blend if you would like, or even to infuse it by chopping up your nutmeg pieces and adding it to your herb infusion when you go to make the base oil for the muscle rub. But if you're using essential oil, you can just mix it with a carrier oil. You can try using it neat, but as with a lot of essential oils, you got to be careful. Some people are a lot more sensitive and it can be kind of hot. It helps aid in digestion and to control blood pressure. And applied topically, it can help with hair growth. So that's another one if you're either making an infusion or using it as an essential oil that you can add to the hair growth blend. And I have a recipe on that as well. I didn't mention nutmeg, but again, consider that as another one of the options you can use. It's great at detoxifying the body, which means it's also very good at helping to promote weight loss. It helps to induce sleep and improve brain health. It's great use topically, so you can add a couple of drops to your homemade skin cream if you want, or even your store-bought skin cream. And it's really good for your skin health. And it's also good at helping to increase skeletal muscle mass, which I thought was rather interesting. And just coming back to the whole thing about overdosing, that's if you're like adding it to capsules and taking it a whole bunch of times a day. But if you're using it like the way I use it, or using it in cooking and baking for flavor, it's not going to happen. You're not going to overdose on nutmeg. But it's one of the spices I add to my mixed spice blend right here, which I have a recipe on. This is something that I can use in whatever I feel like. Most often it's something I will put, especially in the winter months, a little pinch of in my black coffee in the morning. I love the flavor it adds. And then the mixed spice blend is also something that makes up part of my what I call the jet fueled latte, even though I never use it with milk, or almost never use it with milk. It is something I use in this blend. And that I started years ago, back when we were taking ourselves off the thyroid medication. And for a time, I stopped drinking coffee, and Patrick really limited his coffee, and we would drink a cup of this in the morning, and then he would move on to his coffee. Now I find sometimes I'll drink it by itself, but a lot of times I'll mix it in with coffee or with tea from the night before. And then in its whole form, it's something a lot of times I'll want to grate it fresh onto something, adding it to my pumpkin dip, or putting it on top of a pie, or even in a pie like pumpkin pie. And in that case, when I get down to those little pieces like this, that, especially if you're having to hold it and grate it, and you don't want to get down any farther because you don't want to grate your fingers, then at that point, I will take that last little bit and I'll crush it in my mortar and pestle. This here is the one that Patrick made for me out of spalted maple. And then I'll just crush it into, rather than using it ground, I could grind it up, but I'll crush it into smaller pieces and then throw it into a pot of tea that I'm making. So especially if I'm making a tea where I'm already adding ginger and cinnamon and cloves, then I'll throw those pieces of nutmeg in there and let them brew all together, because those are all woody items that you'll actually want to simmer for a time. And then if you're going to add any delicate herbs, that's something I do after I simmer the woody ingredients. Then I'll remove it from the heat, or at least put it on a trivet where it can stay warm, and then add my more delicate herbs to that, so I don't have to worry about overcooking those. And then just whatever sounds good. Sometimes I'll even sprinkle just nutmeg into my tea or whatever it is. And obviously those who like eggnog, it's a great little thing to sprinkle on top of eggnog. You can use it in smoothies, whatever sounds good to you. Maybe even add it to your yogurt or other types of treats. I was just thinking like a spice syrup would be really good for serving over ice cream. So I wonder if doing like a syrup with nutmeg and cinnamon and cloves and maybe even ginger would be a good option, or even just mix it in with maple syrup and then serve that over ice cream. But oh yes, adding this, like the mixed spice blend with all those goodies, is also good added to oatmeal and various other things. So, and of course, cookies, there's all kinds of recipes that you can use nutmeg in. So please share with us down below, what are your favorite recipes to use nutmeg in, or do you have anything specifically unique that you like to do with nutmeg, and have you used it for any health, its benefits, and how has it helped you. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to check out the whole playlist I'll be linking to down below, and including the one I'll put in a separate link on the cloves that just came out. And I also have one on ginger. I also have one on cinnamon. And thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.